career in the Navy. I mean, it has shaped a lot of what I am professionally as well as personally. I made a decision to join at 19 years old. I wish I could say I had it all planned out. I almost stumbled into cybersecurity.
Let's dive into the topic of being laid off. How did you deal with it?
Like you said, it still hurts when we talk about it. I think what I did was, if I didn't do that, it would have quickly turned into sort of desperation mode. My advice is for anyone who's looking to make a change or has already made a change, be cognizant of the fact that you have made a decision. Do your best to make the best out of that decision. Don't lose track of who you are. Sounds silly. It's the easiest being who you are.
You said that you started building your brand in LinkedIn about a year and a half ago. What made you do that?
So I asked myself one day, say, okay, Lester, how many people do you think in your bank know who you are? And how many people know the quality of your work? Okay, if I'm lucky, maybe 40 people know who I am. Sort of spark a light and say, okay, I need to take back some control in my career of where I am heading professionally. LinkedIn was my weapon of choice.
Hi everyone, my guest today is Lester Chng. He was in the Navy and then he decided to leave the Navy and dive into a cybersecurity career in the corporate world. And it was a wise move because nowadays in the digital world, cybersecurity is such a great risk and having a job there will give you quite a lot of pluses. But then very recently he found himself being laid off. But that didn't stop him or slow him down because he used this period in between jobs to write a book. So he put on paper, or let me say digital book, all his experiences so far in the cybersecurity world. So if you want to read and find out how to plan and how to execute a cybersecurity exercise, you can check the book out. But not only that, he's very active on LinkedIn. He has built a personal brand with 30,000 followers. So let's not waste any more time. Let's dive in. Okay, let's start. So who is Lester Chng? What are these events and experiences that have created you and made you who you are today?
So I think great question. So I spent a big chunk of my time as a naval officer, and yeah, that has shaped my personal and professional life. So right now I'm transitioned into cybersecurity, and I took a lot of that skill sets and experience in the military to forge a career in cybersecurity. So when people always ask me who I am a naval officer at my core, and now I'm a cybersecurity professional.
And also an author of a book, right? Yeah, it is on cybersecurity, but it's still a book. Requires writing, thinking, and publishing, which we're going to talk about a bit later. Lester, you're Singaporean,
Yes,
right?
that's right, Singaporean.
Why did you move to Canada?
Singapore, I mean, you have lived in Singapore and worked there for a while. I knew how my life would be maybe 20 years down the road if I remained in Singapore, especially if I continued my career in the Navy. It was very fixed. Everyone knew where everyone else was going, and it's, I guess, fairly comfortable. And a lot of people appreciate that stability and knowing where you are headed to. So I think my wife and I decided that, okay, we know where we're headed to. Yes, it will be very comfortable and we do enjoy it, but we started asking ourselves, okay, what are some alternatives? What if we tried something different? And yeah, that's what led to our decision to try something different and I guess change where we were headed to, and we just made the decision and try it out in Canada.
You had, as you mentioned, wildly different career choices. You started from the Navy and then went to cybersecurity. You became a writer. What led you to make these different choices? Why did you decide to go to the Navy? Why did you decide to leave? Why did you join cybersecurity? Can you walk us through this journey a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I think the decision to join the Navy, I mean, in Singapore, there's conscription. So all 18-year-old males enter the compulsory military service in Singapore. I obviously stayed a bit longer. I stayed 14 years instead of 24 months. I made a decision to join at 19 years old. I
Yeah.
wish I could say I had it all planned out, and yeah, that was the dream job that I had. I actually applied to be an Air Force pilot. I didn't clear the medical on that, and yeah, so I looked at the naval career. Fortunately, my dad was a naval officer, and he obviously had a lot of influence in my decision. He didn't force me to choose that path. He just laid out the pros and cons for me, and yeah, let every wise 19-year-old make his own decision. Which, yeah, I mean, it did turn out, I think, for the better when I look back at times, because it did give me a very strong foundation on a lot of the core professional attributes that I hold dearly to now. Yeah, which I always appreciate telling my story about my time in the military and how it has helped me transition into the corporate world. I almost stumbled into cybersecurity when I moved to Canada. I being a When you move to a new area without a job and everything else that comes with life, your first focus is normally to stabilize with a job, right? So that was my first goal. So I looked at my skill sets and experiences, and the first path that I identified was in project management, because it was a lot of the military professionals move into project management because we are able to define a project like a mission and accomplish the project goals. So I moved into project management, and fortunately, I guess the first project management office I worked for was a cyber PMO, and that sort of like opened my eyes into all whatever was happening in cybersecurity. And yeah, that's where I decided to continue to grow my career in.
What are these most significant lessons you learned in the Navy, which had the big impact on your career after that?
Two things. One is resilience. It's funny that I served on a ship called Resilience. I mean,
Interesting.
at that point in time, you don't really. I mean, the name of the ship is so important because it gives character and life to what is a floating matter of body, right? So it gives the entire crew a purpose, a mission, a set of values that we hold strongly to. And I wish I had that vision and open-mindedness when I was serving in the military, that I could have appreciated it a bit better. But now that I've left and I've looked back at my career, I think resiliency is something that my time in the Navy has taught me well, and it's something very close to my heart these days as well.
And you said two. What is the second?
Oh, that's right. So second is, I think, leadership skills in the military. I have been fortunate to been exposed to good leaders and methodological training of leadership. I think in the corporate world, it's yeah, I don't know. I haven't been long in the corporate world to comment too much on the leadership abilities there, but I think there's the military. There's a reason why military needs good leaders, and there needs to be a purposeful way to train leadership, which I think the corporate world has spent a bit of time looking at how military leaders are grown. And yeah, I think it's a useful area to continue to grow in.
Interesting. But you're right. The corporate world has to do better in training leaders, who are looking a bit more long term than short term. Let's dive into your cybersecurity career or years. What does this entail? And can you share some incidents which would teach our listeners what is cybersecurity and why is it important?
Yeah. So I think cybersecurity is starting to grow in I wouldn't say importance, but grow in prominence. People are getting, unfortunately, news upon news about cyber attacks and how it impacts individual, whether it's your loss of your data, becoming a fraud incident, or even how it's stopping operations of an entire company, impacting, I think in some of the cases, impacting critical services, whether it's healthcare, police, emergency services. It's starting to impact real life. Previously, it's always like a corporate issue, corporate problem. Right now, people are, I think, especially a lot of the impacts to sort of like your federal, municipal government, your day-to-day services for your citizens, uh, and people are feeling it. So I think cybersecurity is starting to become part of mainstream life, which is good. I want to say good, which is helpful for the cybersecurity professional, because we do not. It becomes easier to explain why this area of work is important. So having said that, I think looking at some of the, I guess, incidents or learnings that we have in cybersecurity, I think one concept is that nobody can be 100% secure or protected from a cyber attack. Large corporations are spending millions and millions just to ensure a sort of a minimum hygiene, cyber hygiene, to protect their enterprise, their data. But I think the mindset shift has to take place sooner or rather later, that if cyber attacks are a when and not if, then I think it's important for every organization to examine what a bad day looks like and be best prepared for it, because we know that there's no way you can 100% prevent a bad day. So why not face the problem up front, talk about it, what a bad day really looks like to your company, and you're not going to have the perfect solution to solve that bad day, because there's so many bad days that can happen. But if you go through that exercise, that rigor of firstly being aware of what a bad day looks like, doing your best to prepare, and then if there are things to improve on immediately, go put some emphasis on that. If there are things that are known gaps but you can't really solve for it for now, at least you know it early and try and mitigate that. So I think it's important that whether you're a small company, medium company, large enterprise, you got to ask yourself, are you ready for firstly, what does a bad day, cyber-wise, what does a bad day look like? How ready are you? And what are some of the steps that you can take, given your current posture towards cybersecurity?
Let's dive into the topic of being laid off. I guess this is a topic that is very emotionally difficult, and it's crushing to be laid off, right? But can you share for our listeners, how did you deal with it?
It still hurts when we talk about it. So I think what I did was, I firstly took some time to obviously digest the information. And I think it's important not to react immediately, because you don't want to make rash decisions while you're emotionally charged. So take some time to recuperate and sort of gather your thoughts and feelings.
Thoughts
Yeah.
together.
And when I got laid off, I quickly tried to hold on to who I am. Like your first question, who am I? What value do I have? What experience do I have? And also, I think more importantly, what do I want to do next? Because it's easy to just start applying for any role and any job, and take any job that comes along the way. If I didn't do that, it would have quickly turned into sort of desperation mode, which we see a lot of people doing, right? Because you lose a job, okay, you just blind us on and focus on finding a job, and you just almost lose sense of where you want to go in the bigger picture. and what really interests you or gives you that energy.
And how did you pull yourself out of this?
Important to start looking back at some of the key milestones that maybe you succeeded in the previous years, that gives you that sort of that comfort and assurance that I am valuable. Just because someone doesn't value my services at this time doesn't mean that value is gone. It's gone to that one particular company, but it's not gone to the entire professional world out there, or even your personal self. And therefore, latching back quickly to some of the quick wins in the recent years does help sort of reassure you that, okay, you're not obsolete to this world. You are someone who is able to bring value to whichever company that you choose to work for, or even yourself. That's the best way before you start spiraling. It's like, oh, nobody wants me, nobody needs me. It's a dangerous, slippery slope that we unfortunately see some people quickly falling down.
And did you speak to somebody? Who did you turn to? Did you have any resources, any friends, any mentors to help you?
Yeah, I think there were a few people that I I knew that they knew who I was and the values and strength that I bring to any organization. So I think it's important to have this group of people. You may not need to be very close to. I think that's fine. Obviously, if you have a group close group of whether it's strong mentors, peers, then that would be useful. But it's not necessary in order for you to I guess stabilize yourself. Have a few people that understand and appreciate your work, and of course, these relationships need to be built early on, right? It can't be like I lose my job and I just reach out to Annie, Annie, please console me, tell me how good I am, or she'll be like, who are you? I don't really care about you. So I think those networks and those relationship needs time to nurture and build. Like any strong relationship, it takes time. It takes a bit of interaction, knowing each other. I think that would help in times of need. And I think don't be afraid to reach out to people that you have interacted with for maybe it's even a short period of time. That's fine, but don't be afraid to ask for help. And just a lot of people have a lot of experience going through things that to me it may be the first time. To some other people I've read, like, they've gone through this layoff 4 times in the last 5 years. I was like, oh, I can't even imagine what that feels like to reach out, and people have things to help and share.
Yeah, there was a lot of layoffs in the tech companies, layoffs in the bank. So a lot of people found themselves in the same situation. But you found a job in record time. So what did you do? Can you give some advice? What did you do to find jobs so quickly in the current time when it's difficult? It's really difficult to find any job.
I didn't immediately go into the job hunting mode. So I took a bit of time to map out what the next 3 months looks like after a layoff. Identify some of the things that maybe I couldn't have done when I was on a full-time role, like writing a book, like participating more in webinars or podcasts. You couldn't really do that on a full-time job as much as I wanted to. You would always have to submit more applications because you don't know what you may get. My first approach was to really think about who I am, where I want to go, rather than jump into job search mode, because we all know job search mode can be frustrating.
Yeah, very frustrating. So did you go applying, or did you try, work through your network? What was the ways you looked for jobs?
So I think both. And I was fortunate to take LinkedIn seriously for about a year and a half before I was laid off. And I think that really saved my saved my mental state.
Your
My mind.
mind.
Yeah, it really did save my
Yeah.
mind in a few ways. And yeah, I think the job search was really one of, to be blunt, one of the benefits of networking on LinkedIn, right? It's yeah. So yes, I continue to search, but I also approach many. I had a lot of informal interviews because people knew what I could bring to their company, and because my area of work was fairly niche, most of them don't have a ready role for me, right? Because they don't have either a current function or a particular professional service that they can provide. And therefore, a lot of the interviews were informal. And if it's a bit, how do I put it? I think if the economy was in a much better state than now, where people had a clearer path of their budgets in 6 months' time, I think I'll probably be choosing from 10 different offers rather than a few that I have, just because of budget projections and what they can take on, the amount of risk that they take on. Right now, everyone's just happy to sit on their thumbs for the next 6 months, right? And I think that's where, yeah, but I'm still fortunate to be able to have a few offers that I could choose from.
Let's talk about the book. How did the idea come about?
The book is something that, yeah, I was fortunate to be able to write because it was directly the direct work that I have been doing over the last 3.5, 4 years. And I think what motivated me to write it is that when I started doing exercises in the cybersecurity space, I did my research on, okay, what's the available information and literature out there to be able to help someone who is new to cyber, someone who has no idea how. I mean, I knew exercises in the military perspective, but it's wildly different from a corporate setting. So I tried researching there. There were a lot of frameworks and reference books that I probably fell asleep several times reading it. Helpful to structure, but not helpful in execution. And therefore, that was my motivation as to someone who has done it and gone through the pains of running some of these exercises. I wanted to capture. Initially, I think it was just for me and to consolidate my learning and to help people in the similar places. It helps me point to something. It sounds funny, right? But it points to something tangible that you can say that, okay, I have done this. It's out there in the world for everyone else to enjoy and hopefully gain from. Yeah, I wish I knew all this before I started writing. I don't, right? When I published and I said, I was like, okay, right now it's coming slowly. Like I mentioned, my first book, I'm still learning a lot of whether it's marketing it, whether it's writing it, whether it's maybe even a year and a half ago, I started writing about it. But the inklings of a book probably started maybe 3 to 4 months ago, where I sort of struck. So how it started was I wanted to plan out a posting carousel calendar. I planned out a 4 months calendar about what subtopics I want to talk about in this area, and so I built a 4-month calendar about what I want to write about, and eventually it sort of fell into place that, okay, this starting to look like a structure of a book that I wanted to consolidate and, yeah, be able to, for someone, because you see the internet has so much information, right? You can Google something, you can go
Yeah.
somewhere, but it's in all different places, and it's hard for someone who wants to find the
To put
yeah,
it
the direct
together.
answers. I think how I wanted to differentiate it is for someone who wants to quickly learn and go through maybe even emotional experiences of what I went through, and a lot of the lessons that sometimes your frameworks, your references. I mean, you were from banking, you read through all those guidelines. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't get through that. Wanted to deliver immediately. This is how to do it. This is what you will go through. These are some of the pains. This is how to prevent those pains. And I think that was how it all came into a book and said, okay, I want to deliver this and hopefully. And I think it's an area where it's growing in space, running exercises in the corporate world, and therefore I think the knowledge and the timing as well sort of gave me that motivation. It's like, okay, more people are going to need this sooner rather than later. And I wanted to ship it as early as possible.
No, absolutely. And that's one type of side gig, right? So you make one, another, etc. You're just writing about your experience firsthand. So it's good. A lot of people will be interested. So that's very good side. I wouldn't call it business, but side interest, side hobby, right? Which also brings money because you sell the book. So it is possible in a short period of time because you said you started writing maybe 6 months?
Writing a book, publishing it, marketing it, I'm still learning day to day on what to do. It's like you mentioned, it's almost like running your own business, even though it's a very short project. But yeah, all the things you learn from doing it, it's much. I gain much more from it. When my next book comes up, I think I'll be much better prepared as well.
Absolutely, I'm sure. Okay, so you had so many diverse experiences. What would be your three top advice to people who want to change profession, want to change industry, want to change career, similar to the way you did it? What are the top three?
So I asked myself this question a lot of times, right? Especially when I moved from Singapore to Canada, out of the military, and I asked, Singapore is a comfortable place to retreat back to. Right? It's easy. I guess it would be easy for me to lose heart and say, okay, let's screw this. Let's pack everything and go back home to Singapore. Because
Yeah.
it's such a comfortable place to return to. So I think one of the key lessons I took and decided is my wife and I said that, okay, we made a decision to move. Let's make sure that we make it successful and don't keep looking back. Because once you start looking back, all the what if. Second is really, I don't know why I keep going back to your first question. Who I am. So don't lose sight of who you are. You have valuable experience and skill sets to that will be valuable to someone. So don't lose track of who you are because that would sound silly. It's the easiest being who you are, right? Once you start trying to be someone you're not, yes, there may be a path of growth, and we can always transform to someone you're not. But I think a lot of the core character of who you are, it's easier to be comfortable with that and then grow in skills, grow in experience. But if you are trying to change your character, it's going to be very hard. It's going to be a struggle of changing who you are at the core. So that's the second. And I think the third one is just being open-minded and learning. Like for me, just learning on how to network on LinkedIn, how to build a personal brand. I only started doing that a year and a half ago. And I think it's important to constantly learn and be open to it, to be able to understand that what works yesterday may not work tomorrow, and therefore you have to keep your mind and eyes open to constantly learn and evolve. And I think no topic can go without AI. If we don't do that, we don't learn. Like even AI, when I initially started this, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to learn. And now, like every other day, there's so many tools coming out, and we if your mind is shut off to, I don't want to learn anything about AI, just imagine how far you'll be behind in 6 months, 1 year time.
Yeah.
So we can't
Totally.
afford to close off to any new areas. Yeah.
Okay, you started talking about LinkedIn. And it's a topic I like very much because LinkedIn has had a great impact on my career, especially after I left the corporate world. So you said that you started building your brand in LinkedIn about a year and a half ago. What made you do that?
There were 3 points in the last year and a half to 2 years that I said, okay, I need to do something about it. So I think the first one was when everyone can relate to this. When you spend like 20 hours over the weekend writing a deck for your boss, Monday morning, he cuts 80% of it, spends 5 minutes, cuts 80% of it, and say, okay, we just need 2 slides. He passes it to his boss. Let's cut out. I just need 1 slide. And I was like, okay, I just spent 20 hours for 2 people to spend 5 minutes and cut 90% of the work. So I thought, okay, how can I extract that wisdom and information, and obviously desensitize the information that you have, but share it with people to sort of capture my thought process, my critical thinking about that body of work, and not let it go to waste, right? Because to be fair, it has gone to waste, right? No one cares about the 20 hours that you work. Yes, that one slide may be very important, sure, but I wanted to be able to capture the effort. So that's one. The second, I asked myself, my work already touches a lot of departments, right? Whether it's legal, comms, cyber, fraud. And I've the opportunity to speak to senior people and also the operators. So I asked myself one day, say, okay, Lester, how many people do you think in your bank know who you are? And how many people know the quality of your work? So I was just thinking myself, okay, if I'm lucky, maybe 40 people know who I am. Right? And maybe, I don't know, 5 people know the quality of my work. So I was like, okay, am I working like 40-hour weeks just so that 40 people can know me? So that was my second impetus to say, okay, how then do I put it in front of a larger audience? I don't waste the work that I'm doing. So that's the second. And the third one was, I guess, the most useful. I asked myself, what would I do if I will lose my job tomorrow? So I wrote it down on a paper. I was like, update resume, search for job, and apply for jobs. Then I look at the paper. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm screwed. If this is my response plan to that, I won't find a job that I would enjoy doing. And I think those 3 instances sort of sparked a light and said, okay, I need to take back some control in my career. I need to take back some control of where I am heading professionally. And LinkedIn was sort of just my weapon of choice, right? And that's where I think for most professionals, LinkedIn would be the most ideal platform for you to be able to start to explore and grow in.
Great. And when you started, can you give us a blueprint? So what did you do first? What did you do second? How many times you post? So if somebody is listening and wants to do the same, start building their brand on LinkedIn, what should they do? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So I think the first is so I broke it down into 4 C's: create, connect, comment, collaborate. So those are sort of, when I look back on my journey, it sort of falls into those four buckets. A bonus bucket C is context. Again, who am I, right? The first C, who am I, context. What are you about? What's your brand? And then you start creating your profile, creating posts, connecting with people that you want to be connected with. Commenting is, I think, sort of like the secret sauce of LinkedIn is commenting. People may not know, but I think commenting is probably what got you and me connected as well, right? Yeah. And then here we are in the last C, collaboration. Being on podcasts, writing joint articles, meeting people in real life, networking sessions. So I think that's the final C, so to speak. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was a very interesting discussion. And I wish you all the best. Let me know how the book sells. I hope it goes well. And all the best.
Thank you, Annie. So I always appreciate. I never take for granted being invited to podcast to share about my experience, and yeah, I hope it sort of inspires anyone who is on the fence on personal branding, LinkedIn. There's no fence. Just go over the other side and start that journey. You'll never. There's no one is going to give you permission. No one's going to come to you and say, "Hey, yeah, you're ready to share your story now." No, it's never gonna come. Just make that decision. It's just going to be more and more important. As the world gets confused, they're gonna look for people who know who they are and resonate with them. So
Yeah.
start building about who you are. Everyone has a unique story to share. So it takes time to build it. Don't wait another 5 years to start that journey.
This is all for today. Thank you for being with me till the end. And before you go, I have a huge favor to ask. Would you please subscribe or leave a message and send us any comments and recommendations? The more we hear from you, the better this podcast will be. Thank you for now and see you in the next episode.